Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you joining us for this work session for the Board of County Commissioners of Larimer County. We are here in our conference room at our Larimer County Administrative Services Building in Fort Collins. I am Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shadow McNally, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. I'm sitting at the dais with my colleagues, Larimer County Commissioner John Kafalis and Larimer County Commissioner Kristen Stevens. I'm hoping you're my colleague. I saw you kind of raise your eyebrows. Is that an okay statement? Okay, just checking.
Not to worry, I was saluting one of my colleagues.
Oh, great. I must have caught it at the end there, sir. And also with us today is County Manager Lorenda Volker, who's at the table and on to the side, always keeping an eye on us, which I like to tease her about, is our Assistant County Manager Lori Kadrich. There's a plethora of wonderful and talented folks here at the table. I'm not going to go through and introduce them all. I'm going to let Lori Hodges, our outstanding and renowned Director of Office Emergency Management, and also our 2023 recipient of the Brendan Unit Service Award. And congratulations, well deserved for your service to the community above and beyond your duties as assigned, but I don't even know if we can even capture all the things that you do for our community and for Larimer County. So we're here for a work session with our emergency management for an update and talking about also about our disaster fund. So Lori, I will turn this over to you because you have an amazing team and they're all here, and I'm anxious to hear from all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I guess we can have everybody introduce themselves really quick and then I'll get started. We are going to be talking about, the main topic for today is to just give you guys kind of an overview of where we're at currently with the disaster fund. And when I say disaster fund, I mean the money that's been set aside for disasters that we have had in the past and how we're doing with those disasters. And then with the time that's allowed after that, because I won't probably have time in the performance I don't know if we're doing the performance measures work sessions, but if we do those, there probably won't be time. So I did want to go over kind of our OEM assessment that we did recently with you guys. And then Ricardo has some metrics as well on how he's measuring community engagement. And so as we have time today, we'll talk about all of that. So if you want to start, Caroline.
Yeah, hi, my name is Caroline Epperson, she, her pronouns, and I am the social work intern for Office of Emergency Management.
Hello there, Josh Roberts, Mitigation Coordinator.
Camille Millard, Preparedness and Resiliency Coordinator.
Lauren Barnes, I'm the Office Manager for OEM.
Hi everybody, I'm Ricardo Perez, I'm the Inclusion and Engagement Coordinator.
And Cole Parrott, Deputy Emergency Manager.
All right.
Welcome, everyone.
So this is the spreadsheet that I sent you guys. I sent all this via email to you, except for the handout that Ricardo has, because we just went over that this afternoon. But you guys should have a spreadsheet in front of you, which is the Fund 105 Disaster Fund projections. It's important to note that these are not current totals. So you can't say that we have currently $2.4 million in the fund for the 2013 flood. These are all projections. So with total projected expenditures, total projected revenues, but that's constantly changing because we still have stuff that's moving throughout these disasters. So we've spent a lot of time this year in trying to, with finance had some staffing changes. And so we've been really trying to look at what was the process during the 2013 flood and the Cameron Peak fire. How can we make process improvements for that? So Lori Lopez is also sitting here behind me with the finance department to really look at how do we ensure that in the future, when we have future disasters, we have a really good way of trying to track the costs. And then what makes it so difficult is it's not just money in, money out. So for example, with the 2013 flood, which is the most complex, which is why I don't give you any detail at all on that disaster, we had at least 10 different federal and state programs that provided us funding, and some of that funding was a match for other funding. So it gets really messy in a financial system to try to track that in a way that people are going to be able to clearly understand it without us giving you a long explanation. So I'm going to start with 2013 flood. We should not have any additional expenditures at this point for the flood, unless engineering has a small thing here or there, but I think that most of the stuff is all completed now. And but we do have a lot of revenue that's still kind of come in. So according to the state, we still have about 7.8 million in pending reimbursement. I looked at that with the state yesterday just to confirm, because every time I give a total, they call me later and tell me they disagree with my total. So we got to agreement this time that this is the amount that the state and the feds still see as their reimbursement to us. But again, that's going to be based on eligibility determinations. So FEMA could say we're not eligible for a reason and that they're not going to reimburse us. So that is an amount that could go up or down, not up probably. It could go down depending on the decisions by the state and FEMA. Does that make sense to you guys? So you guys allocated 16 million to the 2013 flood. The total projected costs, we've been saying all along, have been about 110 million. And then the anticipated revenue is at 96 million. So in the budget, if everything works out the way that we're hoping it works out, we get 100% reimbursement, we should have a little bit left over in that fund to be able to either allocate to another disaster or to take back into the general fund in some way, whatever decision you guys make. You had a question?
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori. I guess the question that needs to be asked is, when will we know? I need to at least ask the question. I don't mean it to be rhetorical. When will we know when the state will make a decision and FEMA will determine that we're eligible to receive all the funds?
And Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Stevens asked if you could speak up just a little bit.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
So the question is when will we know when those decisions will be made by both the state and the federal government for reimbursement, correct? So the state has already made most of their decisions about what they believe is eligible, and they've paid us a lot of the money for those projects in anticipation that FEMA is going to pay it out. They hold back 10% though of all those projects. So a lot of that 7.8 million is also that 10% that's still being held back from some of our multi-million-dollar projects that we had from the flood. So FEMA, on the other hand, is a very difficult thing to answer because it's been 10 years. It takes 3 to 4 years by the time that we submit it to the state for FEMA to start working on it typically. Now that could speed up if we don't have a lot of disasters in the region, but it's not quick. I guess I'll just say that. But from the state level, the majority of our funding has been received because the state will front load us and then they wait for reimbursement from FEMA.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Lori. Go ahead and proceed.
All right. So COVID-19, the important thing to know about these numbers is it does not include ARPA. This does not include the CARES Act. That was all done through the budget office, and Josh is managing all of that fund. So if you guys have questions about that, I'd be happy to give that to him. But at the beginning of COVID, we met with the board, and really at that time, I thought that this was just going to be seed money and we'd come back and ask for more because COVID was going to be so big. At the time, we didn't know of any federal programs that were going to help out with that. So at the time, we asked for $500,000 to get us started with the emergency protective measures and to get the EOC established. However, because of the funding that came through, and because FEMA made that program 100% reimbursable instead of a lot of times we have a cost share, we didn't end up spending a whole lot of that money. Mainly the money that we spent out of that $500,000 was on just county costs. And some of those county costs, tell me if I'm wrong, Josh, is like the protective barriers that we put in front of desks and the sanitizer that we had everywhere, some of the protective mechanisms that we put up. So we did spend most of that fund. It looks like we're at about $10,000 left in that fund after all of the costs that we had. But as you can see, the FEMA costs should be 100% reimbursable there. Any questions?
No.
Okay. Other than you can see a discrepancy there between the two totals, that's because FEMA might find things that are ineligible, that they find ineligible, which always happens. So again, it's anticipated revenue, not actual money. So that one's pretty straightforward. The fires are kind of complicated just because we had the 2020 fire, we had multiple fires that same year. And then we had the flooding on top of that. So we've been using the same fund for multiple different disasters instead of using it really just for the one disaster. So as you guys can see at the bottom, there's multiple fires that are listed and the amount of money that's allocated for each of those fires. For each of those, we're still waiting from the federal government to find out how much they're going to bill us. Because in that case, they pay for everything up front, very different than FEMA, and then they give us a bill once they're done. So in another year or whenever they decide to bill us, they'll bill us for whatever they did, what our part is for these disasters. So we have money set aside. We have, these are all estimates at this time, but we're thinking that we will cover everything that we need with the estimates that we have. So once we get those bills, we'll be able to give you guys a better idea about those funds. For Bluestone Fire specifically, we have been told by the emergency services folks, Justin Weitzel's group, that they will not need that $860,000. So we have reallocated that, so it's available money within that fund. Okay.
So I think if you look at this fund as a place where we keep money that we've actually spent waiting on reimbursement, waiting on a bill, this is sort of like the emergency services budget. We set this aside, and then these are almost like projects or events within that budget. I think Lori is working with her team to look at how we might divide it up differently going forward using our financial system. As we need a system that a new accountant can sit down and understand and be able to take over easily. And so I think Lori is really working on that. We were fortunate to have Stacy Hogard for many, many years doing this. And she had spreadsheets and knowledge in her head. She's still working for us, but she's at the ranch now, and so we have access to her. But we want to develop a system where we can really track better. So when you say to us, how much did that event cost, we'll be able to look in a system and answer that question a little more easily than adding up some spreadsheets. So I appreciate Lori and Lori's diligence in making sure that we have the right amount sitting here. But this is not the same as your disaster recovery fund that you set aside for future events. So we call them similar names, but this is actually budgeted money that we've allocated and we're waiting to spend. The other one is your savings account for a disaster. So I just want to make that distinction.
And I have asked that question of Lori a couple of times the last 3 years, so.
Yeah, we see one is really a kind of that future risk fund. And this one is, we have the disaster, we know we have expenses, and so the board has allocated a certain amount of money towards those expenses.
Commissioner Stevens.
Well, and that's why having funds set aside is so important, I think, right? Because, I mean, we do wait on these reimbursements for quite a while, a decade, maybe more. And so, when we've contemplated, about saving money for disaster funds, I mean, they don't even, did you say that they don't even start looking at some of the paperwork for 3 or 4 years?
Yes, the
Is that just
timeline,
a
the timeline
backlog?
now is,
Yeah.
if you look at our system, we've had stuff within FEMA's system for over a couple of years now, and they haven't even started looking at it
So
yet.
it's really essential for us to have dollars set aside that we can start to address some of the issues that
Yeah, 'cause
happen
we
in
pay
our
up front.
community. Yeah,
And there was 110 million for the flood, so
right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dollars.
that's a lot of dollars.
All
yeah.
right, thank you.
All right.
So I'm curious, with the watershed, emergency watershed protections, that was not only the culverts and the debris removal, but it was at some of the.
I'm going to go over all that.
Oh, okay, I'm jumping
I
ahead.
skipped to the fire suppression just because I wanted to get that out of the way.
Okay,
All right, so if you look in Fund 105, the budget that I gave you guys originally had a lot more line items than this. We had everything detailed out from, really, I used the High Park fire budget and I just copied that and then I tried to estimate what we would need, and the board came up with $16 million is what we allocated for the fire overall. I mean, that was over a couple of different meetings. So with that, though, we had a bunch of different line items. I've since kind of squish those line items into what they really mean, and that's what these totals are now. So the stream gauges, as you guys are aware, we have we started after the 2013 flood in really building out the stream and rain gauge network. the Cameron Peak Fire gave us the opportunity and the need to start looking at different parts of our county. So now all 3 of our major river basins have rain and stream gauges. So that is being managed through the engineering department. A lot of that money is going to be reimbursed through different grants that we have. So that anticipated revenue, I think, is going to go up from what I currently have. So I'm not terribly worried about them going over budget. The flood risk analysis, that was early on, right after Cameron Peak Fire. We had asked to have a risk analysis done so we could tell people what are the areas that are most at risk of flash flooding and debris flows. So the initial part of the analysis wasn't covered by any grant, but then we got the Emergency Watershed Protection Fund, and any other risk analysis ended up being funded 100% through that. So this was just a kind of a piece of it, so we didn't use the whole fund there. Emergency Watershed Protection kind of became the beast of Cameron Peak Fire, where usually it's FEMA that has like multiple project worksheets. It ended up being Emergency Watershed Protection, and the reason is, like I mentioned before, we had multiple fires and then we had multiple flood events on top of that, where the Emergency Watershed Protection through Natural Resources Conservation Service continued to tell us you're eligible for another event, you're eligible for another event. So our numbers kept climbing on that. So overall, what I ended up doing was the board had originally allocated $6 million towards culvert repairs and culvert upgrades through engineering. The majority of that was able to get reimbursed through EWP. So I ended up just putting it all together because it didn't make sense to separate it. So we had $7.25 million allocated towards emergency watershed protection, including those culverts. And as you can see, they were able to do just a ton of work, and the revenue from there is $9 million out of $11 million in costs. So that's just a huge savings that we got. So we have that $5 million extra still from all those repairs. However, I do expect more flooding. So that's good that we have that, and it's good that we have a little bit of extra money that then if we do have another event, we can use EWP again if we're eligible.
So my curiosity is, we did that risk, I remember having that risk assessment, and it pretty much almost played out like they said. And it seemed like they liked that we had that, so not every county does that kind of work, right? And so we did that, and we were able to get ahead of it with some of these barrier bags and other things. So does that also down the road with FEMA and other agencies give us a little more, I don't know, credit for, hey, they know what they're doing. We know if we fund this, it's gonna happen and take care of things? Or does that help us kind of have better standing? I don't know how you word it.
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
So does it assist us in getting additional funding opportunities in the future, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
with-
make it smoother, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
With FEMA, no.
Okay. I figured that was the answer.
Well,
but I
FEMA is
had to
black
ask.
and white. It's either eligible or it's not eligible. They have their criteria. So if it's eligible and we meet the criteria and we have the threshold, we'll go after FEMA funds. However, there's a ton of state programs, and any amount of analysis that we can do, whether it's mitigation, whether it's response, recovery, whatever it is, that all helps us in trying to get those grants, because it shows that we've already done our due diligence in saying that we know what the risk is. We're not just telling you that we have a risk because you have a grant available and we want your money. We have already looked at the projects that we want to do. We have a risk that's assigned to those projects, and now we're going to try to seek the funding from that. And so I think that really helps us in the end. So for state programs and maybe other federal programs too, any type of analysis is always a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, engineering had some other costs, other expenses that weren't EWP, so I just put those in here. And then all of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 line items that, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 5. Looks, we have 5 line items that say CPF, that's Cameron Peak Fire. That's all FEMA. So we only had $40,000 allocated for FEMA costs, which I just find is hysterical. But we ended up having 4 different project worksheets with Cameron Peak Fire. So we had 2 for debris. One was right-of-way and one was private property debris removal, which is PPDR. The emergency protective measures is everything that the emergency services folks did and the emergency operations center, all of the work that we did during the response. And then the management costs is what does it cost? We have a certain percentage that we get from FEMA for managing the grant itself. So all of those, these are pretty good numbers, because this is what is, for the total projected cost, that's actually what we did spend for all of those, and those are all done, so our costs won't change. And then the projected revenue is based upon the cost share with FEMA, and we feel pretty confident in what we submitted to them. So they can always say something's not eligible, but we think we're in pretty good shape for all of that. So then, any questions about that before I go on?
And let me just make a quick back up and make a quick comment. You know, of course, we care about being able to get more grants, but that risk assessment was also critical for informing our residents in those high-risk areas about their.
Well, we had to have that for EWP as well
Yeah.
because it has the hydrology involved in it. And so in order to say what we're going to need to be able to do and for engineering to make decisions, we had to have that analysis done.
Yeah, but it was also important for the safety. to
Yeah,
inform.
definitely.
So I just wanted to go back and make sure we care about people's safety too. That's like first and foremost, right?
But we like being fiscally responsible as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so finance staff costs, we had a temporary employee that was kind of a holdover from the 2013 flood that we brought on we were going to do it for 2 years for this fire, but she ended up not staying for the 2 years, and we found out we could handle the workload. So we only spent about, half that money, or a little over half, a little over half. Emergency management staff costs as well. We brought on our mitigation specialist within the Cameron Peak Fire. They started within that, so we had some money set aside in this fund for that position for the first year as well. I'm going to skip over fire recovery projects and then fire suppression repairs. This is the bulldozer repairs that we did, all of the work that the firefighters did to cut lines on private property. We tried to repair that land after the fire. So suppression repairs, that's what that amount is the amount of money, and we hired a contractor to do that. So all of that is spent. Those numbers really should not change at all. Fire recovery projects, this is the area where any new flooding or any new events that we have, that's where I'm taking the money out of, is that. So when finance asks me, hey, we have money allocated over here, we don't need any more in the fund, where would you like it? I tell them to put it here. And so if you see, we should probably change the name, but anyway, the fire recovery projects is just really anything recovery from the Cameron Peak Fire as we go along, since we do expect to continue to have flooding. So all in all, within that fund, we are looking pretty good. I would say, though, that anything that is considered, for the 2013 flood specifically, anything that is considered ineligible by FEMA, we will then have to pay back into the Road and Bridge Fund to make it whole, because we use that fund for this event. So even though we do still have some remaining funding, it's good to keep that funding where it's at until we actually get reimbursed, because we don't know if we're actually going to have that amount of funding, that amount left over. So I wouldn't say right now to shift any of the money from either of these disasters to the general fund or any other fund at this point. We just have too much that's still out there and that's outstanding.
Commissioner Stevens.
So when you say that some of the stuff might not be eligible, is it, we don't know how they're going to interpret the criteria? Like, we've submitted things, but we don't know. I guess I just don't understand why there's so much uncertainty about the reimbursement.
I can give you a good example.
Okay.
So County Road 44H, one of our very last projects, that number of what that was going to cost changed continually over time as we were working with FEMA. Also, costs change as, the next year it's more expensive and the next year it's more expensive, right? So we had cost overruns on a lot of our projects where we believe that it's eligible, but FEMA's only obligated, like say that FEMA's obligated $10 million and our project ended up costing $15 million. That $5 million is kind of sitting out there where FEMA can say no. We don't agree, it's not cost reasonable, and they can say no to that amount. And they've only obligated the $10 million. So until we get a final decision from FEMA, we just don't know about some of those overages that we have. So that's a big part of that amount.
Do they ever change? And, they certainly realize that there are cost overruns, especially with inflation being sort of rampant.
Yeah, but it's difficult to get through the program.
So that's the piece that's a variable, is that there's, in a cost overrun situation, that they might not pick up the slack of an additional.
Correct. And also with County Road 44H and County Road 47 too, we argued with them for years about what the appropriate design is. So they also disagree with us on what we do in our engineering design to build back a road to a standard that we want to meet. So they might say something's not eligible, like maybe mitigation work that we did on a certain road is not eligible. They might say, we're not going to pay this $1 million because we think that you could have built the road back to where it should have been for less. And then we can appeal that, and we go back and forth again on that. But we've done most of that now. Those two big projects, 47 and 44H, we tried to get all of that done before we ended up getting the final obligation so that we would have a better idea about what they're going to actually be able to pay.
There's no, there's clearly an argument that says that if you build it back the same way, it's going to fail in the same way. And so in thinking about like climate change and things like that, where we need to maybe build back better, not to use a administration term, but, is there any do they see that logic, or is it just strictly a numbers game for them?
So FEMA's trying to get there. I'll say that, they have enough feedback from enough people telling them that it makes no sense to build it back exactly as fragile as it was in the first place. So they've always had a part of their program where you can have a certain percentage of the project be towards mitigation. So you could build it back a little bit. What we needed to do was we needed to carve into a mountain, because there is no place to go, which goes well and beyond that percentage. But now FEMA is really talking about more of a resiliency lens, which is how do you look at this project from the perspective of how do you build it back so you never have to return to that project? It's never going to be destroyed the way that it was, But I think that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in their program requirements to be able to make that happen.
Because it could save them money. If we
it
build
would
it back,
absolutely save
right?
everybody money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, in some cases, the administration, kind of off topic, the administration of FEMA projects is sometimes more costly than the project itself. And when you have that happen, FEMA knows that's not okay. We have to obviously make some changes. So they're well aware of it, but it's a big government organization, so it takes time.
Commissioner Kafalas.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Lori. I have one follow-up question to the discussion you just had with Commissioner Stevens, and then a separate question. And my follow-up is, when FEMA makes a determination that a particular, like you mentioned, County Road 43, and we determine this is what is needed to build it, repair the road, do they actually send people out to look at it, or what do they make their determination on? How do they do that?
So they do site visits early on. After this flood, those site visits couldn't be done because these complete canyons were destroyed, right? So we didn't have site visits until we started giving them some design proposals. And then they would say no, and then we'd send another design proposal, they'd say no. And that's when we really had to try to get them to come out and see what we're seeing. So we could really describe to them, if you have a river on one side and a canyon on the other, we can't make the road wider unless we build into the canyon. You can't get rid of the river, the water's going to flow. So they had to really see it, and that was really apparent with Glen Haven. We couldn't get anybody to really understand that the roads that we're talking about in Glen Haven are like Jeep trails for a lot of other people, right? So we had to, once they saw it, they were like, okay, we get it now, and they were able to help us try to figure out what that design is. So a lot of cases, it's just us kind of going back and forth. But they do site visits early on to approve a project, to say, yes, this was flood related, yes, the road should be repaired, and then they look at what the total costs are.
And my second question, it could be a yes or no question, regarding the fire recovery projects funds, did we use any of those funds to help with the costs of the Black Hollow flash flooding?
Yes, Black Hollow is in that fund. I say it as kind of a question, but I'm pretty certain. Everything that was 2020 Cameron Peak fire related is in this fund here. So the fire recovery projects, it says see detail below. That's not on your spreadsheet, but we have the detail of kind of all of those line items, and Black Hollow is one of those. And Black Hollow also was funded through EWP, so a lot of the funding for Black Hollow is in that EWP expense as well.
So when Lori came to you all and talked about each of those incidents, she kept saying, I think we still have money in Fund 105 that we can allocate toward this, and that's what she did. She just continued to stack these disasters one on the other as they were related.
Yeah. And so I think we're doing, from my perspective, I think we're doing pretty good with managing the funds so far. We still have some additional money that could be used for additional flooding. And then as we get reimbursements in, we'll have a better idea about where we're at. And then once 2013 flood kind of ends, then we'll be able to talk to the budget office about either moving that money into another fund in Fund 105 because we have a disaster that still has expenses, or moving it back out into the general fund or wherever you guys want to move it.
So I have a quick question, a couple of questions. I'm glad Commissioner Kafalas brought up Black Hollow, because I remember that first initial assessment the day after was 7 million for debris removal, and ended up not being that much money. But that's what it was, and I think it was through some innovation and creative recycling of things in EWP. But we also have like the barrier bags, and I look at these numbers and I'm wondering,
The barrier bags were all through EWP.
so,
That's part of that total of the 11 million.
but knowing how much I've been seeing what's happened in this retreat and Glenhaven and then that number, I guess, is it, so the 11 million was projected costs, so there's still so I'm just trying to follow. Seems like there are a lot of things that happened, so I'm looking at these numbers thinking they don't seem as big as I thought they were going to be, or maybe they were.
Which is great. Yeah, they're not as big as I thought they would be either. I thought that the Cameron Peak Fire, again, I thought I'd be coming back to the board asking for additional funds once we had better knowledge about what all the costs were. But I think because the Emergency Watershed Protection Program and FEMA were able to provide the extent that they were able to, and also the cost share for Cameron Peak Fire for FEMA wasn't like the flood. It was 90% in a lot of cases, where usually it's 75%. So by it coming right off of COVID, we got some benefits from that in that cost share. And then Emergency Watershed Protection, some of the stuff they pay 100% and other stuff they pay at a lower level. So again, it's really complicated. So it's not something that I can ever just put into a piece of paper and say, do you understand what we're talking about? Because we don't. We have to have meeting after meeting to get
I was
through
gonna
it.
say, we also got a grant to cover part of that cost share as well.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, I forgot, the Colorado Water Conservation Board also provided provided the match for the cost share of another grant program, so.
No, that helps. It helps a lot because, it's, like you said, it's complicated. There's like layering all these cost
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, we're trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can, but in doing that, it makes the financial accounting very complex.
And then I learned something from you last week when you talk about the complexities of FEMA, that a lot of people's job descriptions has that caveat of the emergency or disaster.
All of our job descriptions do, yes.
Yes,
Because
and
of
I think
FEMA,
some
yeah.
of the sheriff's office had said that today too. So is that in our job descriptions as commissioners? So we can.
It should be in everybody's job descrition.
But that's something I didn't know.
But
That's
you guys actually are outlined in our county code and what your responsibilities are, so I think you guys are well covered.
okay. But I just it's something, those little details that you have been very helpful in helping other counties think about that I hadn't thought about. So I thought that was interesting that we have to have those little details like that just to make sure we can get reimbursed. But I appreciate all the things that that help us get as much reimbursement and get as much help and resources as soon as possible, but also to recover a lot of our costs. So thank you.
Yeah, and we'll
for that.
meet with you guys kind of again, maybe every 6 months or so, just to let you guys know, are we getting reimbursements from, the flood? If we go a while, again, without reimbursements, it's worth sending a letter going, where are you? Have you guys forgotten that the flood's still out there? Because that's a lot of money still sitting out there, 7.8 million, so.
Great.
And then also, you guys have already approved us moving budget items between projects as needed within this fund, so we have been doing that to clean up some budget line items with the finance office as well. So,
And
anything else?
Lauren
with
has
that one?
taken on a lot of this work since Stacy is now at the ranch. Lauren has become sort of the financial expert, and so thank you for taking that on. I know it's like putting a puzzle together, and you and Lori, I imagine, spend, right, a puzzle with missing pieces. Right, that's right.
They're there, yeah. I think it's really important to know that whenever there's a Larimer County cost share on any grant, that OEM and other partners within Larimer County are looking for additional funding so that we can build things back better to save money in the end. So a lot of this has multiple grants, no matter how big or small they are, we're applying for them to kind of even everything out, so.
So is that another complexity with having, because the fire and the flood flood impact municipalities, and then they're using, so there's that another cost share and complexity, not only with the federal government and the state government, then we also have our municipalities in some of those areas also bringing funding or getting grants. But it might also be an area where, I'm sure those lines start to blur with certain areas because it's from the event that's come down into, thinking about some of the things Loveland's still trying to work on and find funding for. I'm just wondering is that a whole nother layer of complexity that you don't want to talk about today?
Yes, the municipalities will have specific costs that are allocated to them, and they will then be their own applicant to FEMA. But it's all based on one threshold countywide. And part of that's going to be a cost share agreement between the county and the municipality, whoever's impacted, to determine how much of the impact is the county responsibility versus the municipality. So that's some of the decisions that we have to make right after the disaster, where you guys are working with their policy group to determine the cost share. Once we know what that cost share is, yes, that is an added complexity, because now we have to cost share out any of those expenses by percentage to a municipality or to the county. So one more layer.
Okay. Sorry to ask that question, but I
all
was
good.
just curious. Thank you.
Okay, so what I want to do with the rest of our time is kind of go over the program assessment, unless there's any other questions about the budget. Again, those are projected numbers. That is not what's actually in the budget currently. All right, so we did the community resilience survey, but I don't have those results here for you today, but I will have the total amount for our performance measures if we do that. But this right here is the program assessment. Last year was the first year we ever assessed our program as the team that actually manages the program. And as we said then, we were very strict with ourselves, and we also set ourselves to a higher standard than what you would typically see at a state or national assessment level. So we created these assessment criteria with where do we see that we want the program to be, not necessarily what is a baseline standard. Does that make sense to you guys? So we didn't score really high last year, and there was some concern with this board about the number because it seemed like it was a little harsh, but it's because we wanted to grow a little bit. So you will see through the numbers in this assessment that we have grown a little bit. So our numbers are a little bit better, and they'll be better next year, hopefully. So the first page, I'm just going to go through each of the assessment criteria, and then I'll talk about the overall. But for program management and administration, the very first page, this has 7 questions. This really forms the basis of what our program is. So it's, the buy-in that you guys have. Do we have the support from the board and from the sheriff to do the programs that we need to? This involves our performance measures. It involves local, state, and federal emergency management authorities, which we don't have a lot of control over. So the 2013 or 2023 score is 7.6 out of 10, and this is an increase of 6.3% since last year. So that was a really good increase. The areas of strength, obviously, are we do have excellent buy-in from our board. You guys support us. I think having disasters helps with that, but you guys have always been very supportive with us. An area of needed improvement, I've talked to Lorenda about this, is probably our biggest gap is we can't do a lot of what we want to do with mapping and GIS because we just don't have the staff for it. GIS doesn't have the time for it. So that's probably our biggest gap that we have within our program as far as being able to get stuff done. And there are a bunch of projects that we kind of have in the hopper that we'd love to do GIS-wise for both the public and for our program itself. So questions about that one?
Commissioner Gonfalves.
Yeah, thank you. On that point regarding the GIS gaps, is that an opportunity for greater cooperation with all of our emergency management partners, municipalities, to cost share and perhaps staff share to be able to provide that resource, that service?
So there is an opportunity for better coordination with GIS, and I don't know if Josh wants to talk about that, but he kind of has that on his mind as something that we really want to do is get GIS groups together to really talk emergency management, emergency services projects and what those look like. The problem is that a lot of our partners don't really have the capacity to be able to manage those projects. They don't have maybe the data storage that we have. So there's some barriers, like the emergency services group and us have had kind of a project in the hopper, but it's been there for 2 years just because there's no staff to do it. So we'd like to be able to do more. We're just kind of limited in what we're able to do.
And actually, ahead of this meeting, I was able to confirm with IT that project kicks off in January.
That's what we've been told, yeah.
And is about a 6-month project, so it's not like years long.
I'm super excited. Yeah. It's going to be a great project.
All right, next is program planning. So this really is all the different plans that we have. Are they complete? Are they up to date? And how effective are they? So our 2023 score was 7.7 out of 10. And again, this is a 15% improvement since last year. The main reason for that is we did finish probably the last known plans that I think that we have. I wanted a mass casualty plan in the county since I started. And this year, Cole ran that effort as the project manager to get that mass casualty plan done, and it's now out for signature. So all of our plans now, I don't see a gap in needing a plan. Really, we just need to keep our plans updated and keep testing them. So I think we have a really good emergency management plan overall, the comprehensive plan.
And Lori, what do you mean by being out for signature? Is that through all the other agencies or just?
Yeah, it's a county-wide mass casualty plan, so it's not just Larimer County. So it's going to all the municipalities, I think the fire agencies and EMS agencies as well, because they're saying that they're going to follow the same policies that we're
And did we
following.
sign first, or how does that work?
No, we'll probably sign it last. And it's probably going to be me that signs it, because I
Okay.
come before the board with the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And you guys sign off on the full thing.
So how long does that take to get through all those agencies and all of their processes?
A few months.
Okay.
But at least everybody's agreed on the plan. They all said that they're going to sign it. They said, yes, the plan's final, and we did an exercise on it. So we're there. We just have to go through everybody's boards, and that just takes some time.
So my question, knock on wood, if they've all agreed and we haven't got all the signatures and something happens, heaven forbid,
They should still all follow that process.
so is it verbal binding? I mean, we're not going to have any,
No, it's mainly say that something goes bad on the event and you have the news media that's asking you, did you have a plan? Hopefully we have a plan that we've signed and that we've said that, yes, we do have a plan. We
Okay.
talked through it. But at this point, we can say, we did a year-long planning process. We had exercises involved in that. Everybody agreed that this is what we're going to do. So I feel confident that if we had an event, one, it would go well, and two, we would be able to explain to the public why we did what we did and how it worked.
okay.
Sometimes I think with emergency management, one of the sayings we say is like the most valuable part of a plan is the process that you go through,
Yeah,
not
the
necessarily the plan
agreement.
itself. So like while we're still doing that, I think one of the most beneficial parts is also everything that we've done leading up to where we are. And so all these agencies that have not had a process now have a process, having worked with us to get here. So we're in a much better place, whether that thing is signed right now or not. And it'll be signed here soon.
Great, thank you.
All right, for operational procedures, this is really our emergency operations center, our backup systems, our emergency response and communication systems, call center operations. So it's really kind of the systems is in this piece. So we scored ourselves a 6.6 out of 10 for this one, which is a 7% improvement since last year because we've done a lot of work in our EOC. What we want to do next year, though, is we want to test our backup EOC and go back to the sheriff's office that used to be our primary and really see, can we build up those systems and still run an EOC in a backup center. So that's going to be one of our goals for next year. For resource and contract management, again, this is, do we have all the agreements that we need to in place? Do we have the right contracts? Is our resource management process a good process, and is it working for us? So we scored 6.9 out of 10 for this one, and this was a whopping 20% improvement. And a big reason for that is we updated the emergency management mutual aid agreement, which again, Cole ran that project through and is still getting signatures. And in that case, that's an umbrella agreement. So anybody who signs is signing saying that they're helping everybody else. So we don't have to wait if somebody decides not to sign. It's not like the mass casualty plan where we have a gap or anything. And then the main area of improvement is we'd like to create a supply chain management plan. So we do have an intern that we're working with on that fuel plan right now. So next is recovery and continuity. We do pretty well with recovery because we've been doing recovery for a while now. So we scored ourselves 8 out of 10 on this one. And this area has remained the same. There hasn't been a lot of change here because we have these plans in place. We're working the plans. The area of improvement that we could do is working with our municipal partners to integrate all the jurisdictions into the damage assessment process. So we have gotten agreement from all municipalities that they'd like to use the same process. We have a new plan out. It's out for signatures. And then we also have training that's established next year for the damage assessment tool. All the municipalities are going to use our tool because all the information has to funnel up to the county anyway. So it just makes for a streamlined process. So all that's underway for next year, so that number should go up again next year.
And Lori, I have a quick question. When we do have those damage assessments, I know we get out in the field almost right away. And maybe I don't know if Lorenda, you know this answer. Does it take the entire assessor's office sends everyone out, or just a certain dedicated team to go out?
Both the assessor's office and the building department have assigned personnel that go out for both their teams that have been trained in damage assessments. So it's not their entire staff.
So who would it be, the municipalities? Do they have trained folks too that do that, or?
Yes, so many of the municipalities use the same contractor for building department stuff, like Estes Park, Windsor, and a few others use the same building official. So they would be trained up on our process. And then they're also going to go through training that Eric Freed talked about, which is training on actually doing the assessment. How do you come up with how you came up with a 50% damage, right? So he's going to take them through that, or he's not going to take them through it. He's going to make sure that everybody who's on that team has that building damage assessment training that's for building officials, and then they'll be trained on our tool and be able to use that tool. So we have those trainings already scheduled for next year.
Excellent, thank you.
For infrastructure systems and protective measures, this one actually went down a bit. This is really our key facilities, our infrastructure systems, our lifelines, which is water, wastewater, energy, fuel, whatever. So this one went down, but mainly that was because we took out a question that really didn't apply, that we just learned wasn't really going to be working for us anyway, and then we had some data corrections from last year. So really, this hasn't really changed very much from last year. Our big area for improvement is the county facility risk assessment currently doesn't include Office of Emergency Management, and we really think that we should be included in that, so we're going to try to get that better. Let's see. Next is training and exercise. So we did a ton for training and exercise over the last couple of years. This year, we really focused on smaller, very specific exercises for specific groups. So we ranked ourselves an 8 out of 10 on this one, and we've improved in this area 48%. So that's one was probably, I think, the biggest improvement. The creation of the Dare to Prepare program with pre and post assessments is why all of Camille's work is why this number went up as much as it did. And we had our first class that graduated in October, and we have a plan to get those classes going for the next year. So I don't know if you want to talk about the plan or anything.
Well, congratulations, Camille, and thank you for the work on that and innovation, and well done, and really want to keep a pulse on it. I'd like to come, watch next time. It seems like they're always on tight. We get those dates ahead of time, I can block them out, but there's been a lot of training, and I'm also curious when you present with like the Thompson Valley Mass and Love and Fire. I participated in the first on scene, some of these other ones, and so it seems like there's really opportunities for a lot of folks to get involved. And I didn't know. My question is, as you report to us, I'm asking ahead of time, how do we coordinate with those other partners too? Because that seemed to be pretty powerful training. Since 2 weeks later, one of those trainings I was at, the young man saved a life. So just that's awesome. Yeah. And the Narcan and the overdose in the bathroom. So I'm just curious about that. So thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to say well done. So
it's definitely a two-part collaboration here, where we kind of thought countywide with Loveson's first on the scene, and then us with Dare to Prepare. And then I know Fort Collins is trying to revigorate their CERT program. So we really wanted to add like a collaborative ability to attend class anywhere and anywhere, and they're not specific to their locations. Like Loveland residents don't only have to go to FOTS, they can come to Dare to Prepare, and we're coordinating with CERT, so hopefully new updates on that next year. But I'm telling you now, September of next month, I think we're definitely going, or next month. Gosh, you're like, no, next year will be a guaranteed time that at least one session of Dare to Prepare will always be happening annually, kind of similar to like the Larimer 101, like a time period that is guaranteed for any citizens who want to come and participate in that. And then we'll do hybrid versions of, either only online or weekend versions. So I will make sure to just blast your email consistently with when those are being offered. We'd love for all three of y'all to come guest speak, especially during our section that's all about civic engagement, and how participating even when a disaster isn't happening helps us in the long term with our social capital and resilience levels. So it's definitely been super collaborative, and it's just wonderful experience to work in this area and have that collaborative effort, because I know not every community gets that cross collaboration like we do here.
All right, next is exercise evaluations and corrective actions. So this one is for EOC exercises, kind of our exercise design methodologies. We want to use different types of methodologies, and how do we evaluate that? So we did do a sand table exercise this year, which was the first time we've done that for the mass casualty, which if you've never been to a sand table exercise, consider this whole table a map and a bunch of matchbox cars of ambulances, fire trucks, and public works vehicles, and the emergency responders have to actually stage them where they would stage them. They have to move the people, so we actually have little people that they have to move, and So it gives you a really good visual of what's going on the scene and all the different stuff that you have to control. Like we have barricades that you have to put up to close roads, or do you have to have people there to actually talk to folks? So it tells them, do they actually have the staff to do what they need to do? So everybody, I thought, got a lot out of it. But we want to do more of that where we're doing more drills and different types of events. We did the evacuation exercise, which actually moved in Pinewood Springs. The community members participated, where we sent them a notification, and they actually had to evacuate. And then we did kind of a workshop with them at the fire station afterward, as kind of a lunch and learn kind of a thing. So we just want to do more of that, more what's the word I'm looking for? Innovative type exercises. So this one did go up 6.7% since last year. I talked about the sand table exercise. The area for improvement that we see is that consistency in after action reporting. So after the exercise, what did we learn? How can we do it better? We tend to just be tired from the exercise. And then we have the after action where we talk about it, but we need to solidify that and make it formal. Hazard mitigation. So this area is an 8.3 out of 10. This is one of our higher areas for our assessment. Obviously, with Josh coming on board, he's brought in a bunch of new ideas for us, and he's really he's taken what Stephen did and he's built it even better. And we have some new ideas for what we can do in the future, so that's very good. This also increased 8.3%. We have a lot of mitigation projects underway. There's a lot of people talking about mitigation. The community wants mitigation, so this is kind of a hot topic for our area.
And Lori, may I just pause you there? I got to look at the new storyboard with, is it under?
Oh, yeah, on our website?
Yeah, where is it under again?
The story map is under mitigation? Yeah.
Under,
Community Mitigation Grant Program.
okay. I just want to point that out to my colleagues and to Lorenda. Absolutely amazing, the story. I don't know where it's on here, but the storyboard and showing where it's at and how it's working. Phenomenal job. I love it. Think it's great. I'd like to see maybe other areas of the county or other things do this. I know also NOCO Places 2050 is doing that too, to share that work. And I just wanted to just say I was thrilled to see that. I thought it was amazing, and just thank you for doing some cool things. And yeah.
Yeah, we want to do more story maps because it's a really great way of telling the story visually for people, and to be able to also highlight what our community members are doing on their own, all their mitigation projects. It has their pictures and kind of what they did and how they're going to move forward. So we really like that.
Well, I think the commissioners should have a story map. So I mean, I'm seriously, I think it'd be great to, like, I always say, I know probably other people say, but we're not telling our story. Other people will tell it for us. We may not like the story they tell.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, thank you.
All right, the last one is community outreach, and this one, we gave ourselves a score of 8 out of 10, which is a 22.9%, so 23% increase since last year. This is really Ricardo's work. You know, he does a ton with inclusion and engagement, and our outreach activities with both Camille and Ricardo. We now have the ReachWell app through the Larimer Emergency Telephone Authority that allows for different emergency alerts in 100 different languages. They also have included DeafLink now, so you can have real-time sign language interpretation for emergency alerts. So those are things that really anywhere else in the state, you don't see that level of inclusion. So we're really very proud of Lita, and they can never go anywhere. I'm going to chain them to their desks. And
I'll help you.
And also Ricardo and Camille, the number, I think it was 24 community outreach events. 22 community outreach events last year, and then that doesn't include like another 24 workshops and exercises and everything else that they did, so.
Well, and I want to pause you there because shout out to Ricardo and your team, and Camille's there a lot too. I have community members come up and just say what a fun table, how engaging, how much they learned, how welcoming. Wherever you go, it seems like wherever I go, you're there too, which is great. But you really are engaging folks, and they really like what you're saying and teaching. That's really great stuff, and just appreciate you guys being so much out there and connecting with folks, because I think it builds a lot of confidence and trust, and I just think that's overall great for all of us. And just want to say, just appreciate you all. You guys are all just rock stars, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want Ricardo to kind of just quickly go over this last handout with you guys. This just gives you some metrics that he's using to determine how we're doing with our engagement.
Yeah, so last year, at the beginning of the year, we wanted to come up with a Larimer OEM communications and engagement strategy. And then at the beginning of the year, we wanted to put the the metric to shoot for at the end of the year to raise awareness of Larimer Office of Emergency Management by 10%. But really, the goals of this communication and engagement strategy aim at raising OEM awareness within the community. Can we start and strengthen relationships with underserved communities within the community that may be disproportionately impacted in disasters? And are we providing information in a timely and accurate manner throughout kind of the 4 phases of emergency management? One of the things I'll share before kind of going through some of the numbers is we have been working with partners to create, Camille and I have both been doing this, is working with partners with other community organizations, other nonprofits to see how we can work to provide more accessible, preparedness presentations and workshops, if it's in different languages, if it's in different areas that, may not be exactly a county building, but just a place that's more familiar to folks and more accessible, and how do we learn to provide this content more in a culturally competent manner. So we did measure some of the website metrics that we had, some of the social media that we're pushing out information throughout the year, and then some of the community events, some of the outreach events that we're doing, some of the preparedness classes, and then we also measured the community resilience assessment and kind of the response rate that we're getting. So for overall, and the website on our Larimer.gov/emergency website, which is our Larimer OEM website, we had 26,125 views in 2022. And then we had kind of a lower rate of 20,783 views this year. Lori and I were speaking this morning, maybe incidents. We had fewer incidents than last year in 2022. I'm able to see kind of the most popular pages as well. So our main page, and then as well, I'm able to see some of the pages that were seen last year that we weren't able to get some views this year. 2 of those were kind of the fire restrictions website on our Larimer OEM page, and our incident kind of report, website if it says if we have a current incident. So yeah, that's a number for this year. We want to do more of reorganizing within our Larimer OEM website for this next year, and then continue to push out, telling the story, like the story maps for next year. Then we use X, formerly known as Twitter, for that. So in 2022, we had posts seen of 303 posts throughout, kind of the posts that we were sharing from other organizations and the posts that we were sharing ourselves of our content. Yeah, this year, it's interesting to kind of look at the X analytics on the back end. So, that's the number that we had. We did do kind of 30 days of preparedness posts this year on our social media. So people felt like they were just at least seeing more posts that we were sending out. On Facebook, we also have a Larimer OEM Facebook account. Like we mentioned, we had fewer incidents, so we were pushing out less information. So it's interesting to see from Twitter and Facebook the relationship, and we had 44% less engagement or posting on Facebook. And then so we did some preparedness trainings and some outreach events, but in this year we wanted to focus and do some outreach activities and preparedness presentations and workshops in areas throughout the county. So I know Camille and I were intentionally looking at other areas throughout the county that we didn't exactly target last year. So,
Well, I had an idea for that. Being a caregiver and been involved with as a commission or board member and then council member and now commissioner, Office on Aging with some of these folks. I mean, I looked at all these. My mom is struggling to even send a text. And so I got a bunch of people texting me over the weekend, is your mom okay? Is your mom okay? What's going on? Well, she was texting all these wrong people with weird messages. So they're all panicking and I'm getting all the calls. So I think then she's feels bad, but it was kind of frightening for a while. But a lot of these folks, she didn't have internet and things. And I don't know if we've done as targeted outreach to the older adults, like through Office on Aging or Partnership for Age-Friendly Communities or Senior Connections. How do we help that population who is not tech savvy, who may not be signed up for LEDA? How do we even show up and help them sign up for LEDA, and how do we help them engage? And kind of, it's a different age group that moves at a different pace, but may not be getting the LEDA text. So I didn't know if that was something we could look at, maybe having you come present to the Office on Aging, helping them sign up for an email or a text message, like walking them through that and helping them do that, and then helping them teach others to be involved. And I don't know if you have had a targeted outreach to that group, but we might need to do it in lots of areas at the senior centers or something. And I didn't know if you were interested in it. I just think it's,
Yeah, it's definitely on our radar.
yeah, I think it's important group. Yeah, so if, I would love to help with you to do that, have you come to the Office on Aging Advisory Council. Those folks are very much plugged in all those groups too. It's just something I think would be a group that I want to make sure that we're helping. So Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, just on that same topic, the library does a lot of services for, if we could get them to kind of help integrate that in some of the work they do when they put on those events for people who, how to use your technology.
Yeah, that's a
That
good
might be, something that they could just slide into some of the work that they do too, and then you wouldn't have to be at every location doing it, just an
Yeah,
idea.
that's a really good idea. Well, the last piece, we rushed kind of through that, but you guys have the numbers in front of you, but we did have an increase over that 10%, which was Ricardo's goal. And then we have that goal again for next year, another 10% to increase that. So the last page of that assessment just shows you the totals. And so it shows you that overall, our emergency management program has increased by 13.7% in capabilities from what we believe we need to have. So I thought that was a really good increase. So that's really it. I know that we're out of time, but anything else or any other questions you guys have for us?
Well, I guess we just all wind up with some comments, but I just want to say, well done. I appreciate kind of these new metrics or things you wanted to kind of go through. Very exciting to see improvement. I think you're right. We were all like, whoa, why are you scoring yourself so bad? We think you're doing a great job. But I can say I visually have seen and interacted with some of these changes, and I think it's great to see all the things you're doing, and I'm super excited about some of the things you're doing, and I love the storyboard. I'll say that again. And I just want to thank you all for your work. It's really important, and I'm really proud of the work that our Office of Emergency Management does here in Larimer County, and how we help other parts of the state, which we heard a lot at the conference. Kept thanking Lori and the team of all the things we do to help
We're
others.
always willing to deploy. And I did reach out to Mike Willis at the state, and I told him, if you hear of another community that needs help, we'd gladly deploy, because it lets us learn too, and then bring back those lessons here, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Kowalski, any comments?
Just to say thank you. I need to transition to another meeting soon,
Oh.
so.
Commissioner Stevens, anything you'd like to say?
Thank you for your work, and it's great to see the progress that you've made, and, well done.
And Lorenda, anything?
Yeah, I guess I hope the community, everyone who's listening, and maybe folks who see you out in the community, really appreciate that you never rest, that you're always looking to do better, that you're always learning. I think that's really important. That's a county trait, but when you look up continuous improvement, I think this office pops in to your picture, because you are continuously improving all the time, always pushing the envelope, always looking to do better, to be good stewards of county resources. Those are all critically important things. Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Great job. Great presentation at 2:33. We are adjourned. Have a great day.